And we are live, just as you finished filling up your cup. with, with what, I don't know, but...
fresh root beer. Well, I wouldn't say fresh, but it's root beer.
Root beer, okay. Is it craft root beer, or...
No, it's just A&W.
Okay.
Name brand. No advertisements. You can't see that. We're not sponsored yet.
I like the independence. It feels good, but
it does.
First of all, it's official. I will be leaving the wonderful world of retail after 10 long years. So things should be settling into a little bit more of a normal schedule. It will be a Monday through Friday type of schedule. So that'll leave more flexibility to get some stuff done, on our end. And I kind of started the ball rolling on that. Instead of a podcast Monday, I did post an article about 3 past media sins. After seeing the accusations of fake news going about, it brought to mind one particular individual in question, Kevin Mitnick, and how certain exaggerated things happened, as in the author in 1994, John Markoff, wrote a front page story to the New York Times, and some of the claims kind of made were exaggerated. One of them being he allegedly attempted to break into a computer system for a bank to create and publish a false press release. I actually watched the documentary Freedom Downtime, and that one of the people interviewed basically said that was actually tracked down to human error. Mitnick had nothing to do with it. There were also claims that Mitnick was the FBI's most wanted computer hacker, which was actually false. He was on a U.S. Marshals poster, but that's not quite the same thing. So, yeah. But there were a couple of other examples. TheNextReport.com has that up there now, and you'll notice that SSL encryption works properly now. Not just sometimes or what have you. Finally got that working. So you got to have the right plugins and prevent the htaccess file from being edited behind your back, which is what was happening. So, anyway, jumping right into the thick of things. And this is kind of a month old by now, but still interesting nonetheless. And in this election year where everything's just topsy-turvy, this little tidbit came out. Where you have the feeling that it's almost like it wasn't supposed to happen, but it did anyway. That kind of feeling.
That's the funny feeling that most developers get when they're looking at their code. There's a meme out on the internet, and I can share it here in a minute, but it says something about like you're looking at this code. I just wrote this code and it's not working, and I don't understand why. And then afterwards, the code works, and I don't understand why. It's hilarious.
Microsoft is now a part of the Linux Foundation. They Swapnil, friend of mine, actually wrote this article on CIO.com a month ago, and it came off as the mentality of if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. Because think about it. First, it was largely ignored because it was a hobbyist thing, and then all of a sudden, they had quote unquote legitimate fears regarding this during the whole antitrust lawsuit, and then Steve Ballmer referring to it as cancer.
Ballmer was cancer for Microsoft, I think, because ever since, I mean, as weird as it is, ever since they've started embracing open source and Linux, the things that Microsoft has been doing has been improving in terms of quality and performance and everything else. It's impressive.
And I think even Ballmer is kind of softened after leaving the company, so maybe he realized he was wrong on some things. But from that, for those who are wondering, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later, I may be considering a crossover Office subscription just to be able to run Office 365 and Office 2016. But, and unfortunately, I'll have to consider that because, well, as soon as they get that part working, but I'd have to consider it because according to Swapnil, and I cannot pronounce that man's last name to save my life, during his conversations, from what I gathered, the feeling that came out of it was, Linux is mainly a developer platform, that even Canonical is kind of backed away from consumer space. Although, I'm running Ubuntu on this desktop and it can be used as a consumer product quite easily. It's mainly seen as a development platform, where Microsoft's focus on is cloud and mobile. And the side note, did you see the video regarding the computer as a prototype with a Qualcomm processor in it with Windows 10 64-bit and ARM build of it?
No, I don't think I even heard about that.
I barely.
Microsoft trying to create a build, but I didn't know they actually had it running on something.
Windows 10 Enterprise Edition. Qualcomm actually had a video of this. Probably have to find it and put it in the show notes later. It just popped into my head. Basically, their way of trying to come up with a way to have, computers or, combo systems with really good battery life. And here's the kicker. This thing's supposed to have an x86 compatibility layer, as in an emulation layer, to where you can run Win32 applications without modifying them. So, I'm thinking next year we may hear more about it, but I think that may be part of their mobile strategy. That, and let's face it, they've got Facebook and Windows 10, but beyond things like that, the app ecosystem isn't quite there yet. That's why you don't see as many things about Windows 10 or Windows phones anymore. App ecosystem just wasn't there. So I'm guessing they're going to focus on tablet or combination 2-in-1 devices, and then maybe down the road slowly bring that back in when it's ready for prime time. But figured I'd throw that out there. It just popped into my head. But you've been playing with something that they also made available for multiple platforms, Visual Studio Code, which I ran for 5 seconds in the past. Played with it, and And sure enough, some of this stuff popped up saying, hey, you need to correct this. Apparently my HTML is out of date. You have to declare, yeah, you have to fully declare that it's an HTML file, which I'm like, huh. Hence the exclamation point doc type.
Yeah, that piece varies depending on which version of HTML you're wanting to code for. There's different ones. There's we're not at HTML5 now, and for HTML5, it's just the doc type specification and just HTML. That's it. It's the simplest one. But if you're doing HTML4 or 4.01, it's that, and then there's a URL for a specific thing or a parameter. I forgot what it was. And then if it's XHTML, which is a very strict version of HTML 4.01, it's not lenient at all. If you make a little tiny mistake, the browser won't try to figure it out and correct it for you. It will full on not even load the page.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I messed with XHTML a little bit when I was coding in Dreamweaver from Adobe.
But, you know, with the Visual Studio, I noticed the IntelliSense popping up to a point. Although I'm not quite although, you know, I don't code on a regular basis, but, you know, just typing text, I'm not sure I'd see the use in IntelliSense say on a regular basis if you're primarily typing text in a code editor, but it might come in handy if somebody might see it as a time saver. You said you were playing with it. Anything you like about it, dislike about it?
There's things I dislike about it, but one of the things that I really like about it, here, I'll share my screen with our viewers here. Application window.
And if you see me turn my head a little bit, I'm looking at the other monitor.
I'll just share all the windows that I have open right now.
Okay, so
42 monitors, nice for this. But anyway, I should have this project up that I've been tinkering with, trying to get some OpenGL stuff to run. I'm having some trouble with this line here, but so one of the features that Visual Studio Code supports is the ability to go in here and set up a debug perspective or specification for whatever type of language you're using. So right now I've downloaded the Python extension, which right here, these are the ones that I have installed. Here's the Python extension. I've downloaded that so that way I can support, because it supports debugging. And this is a very, very, very lightweight text editor, but it's kind of a IDE at the same time. So in order to support the debugging, you have to create a launch.json file with this type of text. It has all these parameters, like the name, what kind of type it supports, and then the path to your Python, and some other things that are. A lot of this is filled. This is 100% default. All I had to do was, when I went in here, I think what I did was I clicked that. Yeah, what this does is generates a configuration, and you can have multiple too to support like things like where is it, Django and then Flask, which are both web containers for running web apps with Python, and you can run them right directly through Visual Studio Code. So since I have this configuration set up here, I can go into some of my code here, and I'll run it, but it's not going to run. So I'll go in here to debug, click this, and you have to do it on the file that you have open. There's a little funky thing about that, but then there's shortcut keys for things like this. This is just to continue on, or this is to step over, and then this is to step into and out of functions. So I'm just going to continue on and run over this. It's going to load. These are just import statements in Python, but it fully supports debugging. So if I had another, I'll get to this point down. I'll just go to here. I know it's going to set up the window. So I hit F9 to continue. Oh, it straight up blew up. Oh, it's blown up on this line here, I think, on that import. But either way, you can see that it supports debugging. It's actually really powerful and really nice. I love it so far for the debugging. But from that perspective, I have another editor that you can really compare it to, which is called Atom, which is completely. How did it open in that directory? That's weird. It's completely hackable and configurable, and from that perspective, Visual Studio Code almost matches it. But as far as I'm aware, Atom does not support debugging. So that's the one thing that I like about this compared to Atom, which I've used a lot recently at work. So, but that's my perspective on it. I think it's actually very powerful, and it's oops, up through my keyboard there. It scared me, but I think it's pretty powerful, and it supports multiple languages too. It supports more things than just Python. You can also debug JavaScript once you find the extension and stuff like that.
It also has Git support built in, right? Because I
didn't
noticed
that, but this project that I have here doesn't have Git. It isn't loaded into Git right now. I do have a project that I was messing with at work with this. I can pull it in, actually.
Ooh.
Apparently it doesn't want to load right now.
But so for those who just want to crank out code, it might be something worth looking at.
Oh, absolutely.
And of course, for those who want to run this for 5 seconds, be like, yay, it exists. Which, of course, one of the downsides to this on the Windows side is apparently malware authors have been taking advantage of PowerShell scripts to spread their stuff all around. But hey, at least it's available on Linux too. As an alpha build, so not everything's there. I managed to get it installed, ran it. Yep, there's the copyright notice, and I'm in a PowerShell session. I'm like, yay! And then I exited shortly afterwards because I saw no point in it, unless you have it feature complete enough to where you just change your default shell to PowerShell. But interesting anecdote is that on Ubuntu on Windows, you can actually run that session through a PowerShell session too. So kind of cool, I guess. But because basically when you're running Bash on Ubuntu on Windows, it's you're basically, you click the link and bam, it pops up. It's basically a glorified DOS window jumping into a simulated Linux session where it's just a copy of Ubuntu utilizing Windows that basically pretends to be a Linux kernel, sort of like how Wine works. Actually, it's exactly how Wine works, pretending it's a Windows kernel, just translating it to as necessary. You said, have you ever used PowerShell?
No, not hardly. I try to avoid it. To me, it's not much different. I mean, I've used it a very tiny bit, but to me, it's not too much different than command prompt, which is archaic and sluggish and terrible in my opinion. So I apply the same opinion to PowerShell. And I use Git Bash at work every day, and I use Bash. I mean, obviously Linux. So I'm just more accustomed to Bash.
And I can use it too. It's just I'm like, oh, it's like, wonder what it looks like. Nope, it doesn't pop up in its own window. You have to have a command prompt window open, a terminal window open in order to run it. Like, interesting. Like, oh well. But yeah, I saw it. The font even looks exactly as it does on Windows. So I'm like, oh, okay. Tried a few of the commands, told myself there's no point beyond this, and I exited out of it. So, but those are just like two examples of technologies that have been released where you, in this case with PowerShell, you actually can look at the source code if you want to. They even have a, learn more about this on a GitHub page. And so who knows, maybe somebody will basically extend the hell out of this and make it into something that would be useful and people could put pride in. I don't know. But I'm assuming that it would be perfect if somebody was logging into a Windows server or something from afar and running scripts or something, so they don't have to change devices or operating systems or whatever. Right now, I don't see the point in it, but kind of cool that they did that. And speaking of which, Crossover Office 16 is finally out. They support Office 2013. In a comment on a previous blog entry, they said they were working on 2016 as well. And that's part of the reason why I'm considering it, because Word, I don't mind. I use Outlook a lot too. And I like being able to just stay on the same system without jumping back and forth between systems all the time. But are you a 365 subscriber?
No, I don't hardly use Microsoft Office. If I need any document editing and stuff like that, I primarily use Google Docs, actually, because it's simple and easy. The only place I use Microsoft Office is at work, and that's because it's already installed on my PC at work, so I don't need to worry about that.
Like, do they use an enterprise edition of like 365, or is it just
it's 2010 right now? They're pretty archaic. We're still running Windows 7 too. Well, which I guess is not necessarily a bad thing.
Nah.
Other than the fact that it's Windows.
Right. But lately, this release apparently supports 64-bit Windows applications too, so that's exciting. And like I said, I don't mind Microsoft Office at all. They've improved that product greatly, and I still open up LibreOffice. I use Google Docs as well. I'm kind of a hipster when it comes to software, I guess. But yeah, there. I know there are some out there who like use Ubuntu or desktop Linux and are like, well, I want Office compatibility too, and what have you. And again, if it comes to getting a subscription to Crossover, which I had a free one for like a year because somebody wanted me to review something called iMagic OS or something like that, which was customized KDE 3 on top of Ubuntu based and all that good stuff. That was years ago.
Hmm.
And basically I was trying to find out if them selling a copy of it and quote unquote including a copy of Crossover Office was legal. It was more of a gray area because what the guy would do is if you purchased a copy of this thing, right, he would turn around, use some of that money to get you an individual license to Crossover, and the key would wind up in your email and everything else because it was being touted as, consumer friendly. You could run your Windows apps and all that good stuff. I think this thing is defunct now. I can actually look pretty quickly if it is or
What was the
not.
name of it again?
iMagic OS.
That's right.
It's oh my god, that website still exists. and it has nothing to do with that. I guess
the video site is what it looks like now.
Yep, I think it is gone now. Yep, I think it's gone now. Like the iMagic OS 10 page still pops up. This was that used KDE 3.5. Yeah, this thing is obsolete. Yep, it's done. But yeah, it was semi-controversial at the time, and then it just basically disappeared. I don't think people were really interested too much in doing that because really, if they wanted to, all they would have had to have done was install Kubuntu and then purchase a Crossover subscription. But I looked at it, interface looked somewhat interesting, but I never really could get myself into it or anything like that at all. But like, have you ever tried Crossover?
No, I've never used it actually. I've used Wine in the past to run some games and stuff like that on older versions of Ubuntu, which would have been 10.04 now, I think, is what I was trying to run it on. Either that or 11.04. It's been a while. It was when it was before Unity, before the days of Unity.
So. Oh yeah, yeah. I run Wine when I try to levelate the audio because the Linux edition, which was targeted for Ubuntu 9.04 or something like that, and basically the code was badly maintained on that front, but the Windows binary does work fine on Wine on this edition of Ubuntu. It still works, but And actually, I remember emailing the people behind it saying, look, is there any chance that the source code of this can be opened up so that people can maintain this? And I was directed towards somebody from, some other software company and being told you'll be wasting your breath. And then the guy said, yeah, we've been talking about that. And that was over a couple of years ago, which tells me that I was told that just so I would go away. So I may be contacting that person again saying, a long time ago, I asked about this. Are there any updates on this? If not, what would it take for it to happen? Because let's be honest, a lot of that stuff, yeah, you could probably do in Audacity, but it saves so much time and so much effort. And since they're not, maintaining this thing anymore, why not just release the source code and let other people mess with it and just keep it up to date? But that's my 2 cents on that. Anything else development-wise you've been doing, or not really?
Not really, just kind of tinkering with some, trying to get OpenGL working with Python and kind of figuring out how that works. There, it's definitely different than coding in C and C++. But other than that, I've been fooling around with a project to keep my mind, fooling around with the project to keep my mind up and going. And it's called, if you want to get into code, it's all mathematical problems that can easily be solved with code, and then they progressively get easier. It's called Project Euler.
Okay.
And it's really nice. You don't have to register if you don't want. You can just go in and look at the problems and then do one, and then there's solutions online to check to see if what you've done is actually correct. Like the first problem is really easy to do. It says if we list all the natural numbers below 10 that are multiples of 3 or 5, we get 3, 5, 6, and 9. The sum of these multiples is 23. Then it tells you do the same thing for the multiples of 3 and 5 for all numbers below 1,000. So you just can write some code to do that pretty simply.
Well, that's basically a good way of keeping a developer's mind sharp and improving their math skills in terms of understanding and implementing rules.
Oh yeah,
because mathematics, that's I think the biggest secret of it, even though I lost most of that base a long time ago, is the biggest secret to mathematics is, it may seem arcane to a lot of people or like magic, but and that if you're not good at math, you can't code. That's not true.
That's not true at all, because I had trouble with higher level calculus type mathematics, and if you can get past some of the basics of calculus and some of the basics or some of the advanced math, if you can get through the classes, once you keep practicing with it, you'll definitely get better. And some of it comes real easy, and a lot of it's just concepts. So now I still can't do a proof to save my life. If I try to do like proof, like I can say that to get a, for example, the Fibonacci sequence. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, and so on and so forth. There's actually a calculation that you can do to get that, and it's 100% proven all the way through. And there's a proof to do that, but I can't do it at all.
And the the big secret is know what the rules are and how they function. And in the case of programming, code it properly. In terms of calculations, that's what the system is there for, is to do that heavy lifting. So if you know what the rules are supposed to be, and you know how to implement that, you can just basically tell the computer, okay, I want you to do this for me.
Basically, that's what it boils down to. There's a site out there that there's actually tutorial videos on YouTube. I've only looked at a little bit of them. And it really doesn't benefit me much, but for someone who's trying to get into programming and who's just interested in it and wants to kind of learn about it, it's excellent for getting into it. And it's called Automate the Boring Things with Python. And what it does is it's a guy that's just kind of talking about programming in general and stuff like that, and that how programming, simple programming for stuff like this, which doesn't have to be math heavy. It's usually, you're better off if you have a great understanding of mathematics and stuff like that. But what it's trying to tell you to do is that there's things that you do in your everyday life, especially if you're an office worker, you're sitting at your desk, you're doing something, or if you do a lot of calculations, or if you do a lot of repetitive tasks. He suggests that instead of repeating those tasks all the time, especially if they can be done by a computer, write the code to do that. Because then you can go in and say, hey, I have this program, regardless of how well you've written it or whatever, as long as it accomplishes the task, that's the end goal. If you can go in and you can code this, then you're automating all those tasks that you normally have to repeat every morning or every day or whatever it is, which particular day. You go in and do that, and then boom, you've saved yourself a ton of time that you can sit there and either not do anything or learn more about programming if you really get into it. It's extremely beneficial. It also teaches you to be lazy. But that's just a benefit.
Oh. And speaking of all the things, oh crap, I'm echoing. I hear myself in my headphones, or I heard myself for a second there.
I think it's gone now.
That's good. I recently upgraded my router. It is plugged in and it's doing its thing. And it has something called ReadyShare, where you plug in something in the USB port and you can share it throughout your network. Of course, it's aimed at Windows, but there's a way of getting it opened up in Linux as well. And I don't believe I have this mounted, because I probably don't have it mounted at all.
Does it create it as a network file system, or does it create it as a Samba share?
I had to do it through Samba, and I don't remember what it was, but that's all right, because I have plenty of disk space here. It's just if I want to zap it somewhere.
It's good for having a centralized backup location, especially if you have a lot of PCs.
Oh yeah, and plus, fortunately, it's not one of those versions of Netgear routers that's vulnerable to rogue scripts either, because I actually tested that and like, nope. Gave me a 404 error message, which told me that nope, it's not vulnerable. Some of the Nighthawk routers are vulnerable to this thing, which is bad. I'm like, which is a good thing I didn't go whole hog on upgrading to a super high-powered smart router. This is more of a lower-end smart router, because it kind of listed its MIPS processor, not very much RAM, but don't need that much RAM for it. especially if you don't really push it that hard. I just needed something that has a bit better range. And so far it seems to have better range, at least better speed for wireless. Because the one I had plugged in was like, had it since 2011. It was over 5 years old. So figured after that much time, I better update it before malware hits it and destroys it. I don't know what I'm going to do with the old one. If I just use it as an access point or what in another room, but there'd be no point. Or if I just set it back to factory and just give it away at Salvation Army or something. But yeah, just the concept of being able to share that stuff. And I think it has a 5G band too. It's dual band. So I haven't connected it to the 5 gigahertz, anything to the 5 gigahertz at all. Because I'm not going to really get that much higher speeds where I'm at. So
it'd only be more beneficial for if you have large storage attached to your router, then you can transfer those files at a much more rapid rate. It's not going to benefit your actual internet connection too much.
Fair enough.
Unfortunately.
But the good news is it's there if I need it. Not going to really use it though. Like there's no benefit for it, but figured it would have a little bit better range. At the very least, a little bit more powerful. Some point I'll down the road I'll get something that can, practically go for almost an entire block or something. if such a thing exists. Or just get one of those extenders and call it a day. I still haven't opened up the new monitor I've gotten, and I still haven't checked that tower that I bought for like $5 to see if it powers on at all.
You might check, make sure it works. Maybe you can upgrade the hardware in it.
At the very least, there's parts in there that can be salvaged. But yeah, I've got plenty to do, and with new employment coming up, I'll be able to have more time for that. So, just 2 more nights after this. Because honestly, I was anticipating being like, I'm not going to start this new thing till next year. But no, I get to start before the end of the year. So
that's awesome.
And the best part is, soon-to-be former employer, I have approximately 250, give or take a few hours of paid time off left.
That is ridiculous. That's going to be a nice payout.
Well, what had happened was I had 2 weeks of vacation from last year that got converted to that. So I was still accumulating that from the beginning, the others from the beginning of the year, and it was then just made available to me right as those 80 hours were converted over. And then I went on vacation a couple times, but it wasn't it was onesies, twosies. It gave me I timed it right to where it didn't take too terribly many hours. But in the meantime, I didn't use much of the other PTO I generated. So what wound up happening is I have this much now. I thought I would stop accumulating but I guess it depends on how many hours you worked as well. So, and if I had gone to where I didn't start until next year and didn't end until next year, what would have happened is 80 of it would carry over, and then the rest would have been paid out first check in February. Well, I didn't want to wait for that to be split up, so I timed it just right. my timing was fantastic on this. So
I'd say so.
The final pay won't happen till the end of the month, but by then I'll already be having some income from the new job. At least I hope so. Or at least, basically get on the payroll so that the ball can get rolling, so that when I get the final pay, then I'll be able to figure things out. I also have to figure out 401k, health savings account, getting those moved over, or what to do with them. Health savings account will be with me for the rest of my life. I just won't be able to contribute to it anymore unless I have a qualified, high deductible plan.
Mm-hmm.
And new employment, there's they pay $4.27 an hour towards all of that, meaning I get to keep more of my pay in the end. So in all honesty, if I really wanted to, I'd have to probably find a way to change custodians and the whole 9 yards and go from there and be like, I just want to change my custodian because I'm in a new place of employment, and call my current custodian and go, okay, how do I go about this? And then go from there. Because, oh man, who knows, it might even be automated, which will make my life easier. Because what'll happen is whatever's left goes into a retirement fund, basically, because they can't give it to you directly because of the nature of that type of employment. But it's a pretty swell thing. So I'm looking forward to more future episodes.
We'll definitely be able to get together more on the weekend when I don't have to work and you don't have to work, and we can maybe even crank out a couple episodes instead of just doing one at a time. And
oh yeah,
spend a little bit more time on planning things too.
Oh yes, and definitely get to experiment with this thing.
Is that an HDMI adapter?
USB to VGA, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because like my friend Randy, I want to see if I can have monitors stacked on shelves or something. And no, he literally at his office, has in front of it is a big monitor. To the sides are more monitors. On the top are more monitors. It's insane.
That does sound insane.
Yeah, I suggested to him because he has these expensive VGA adapters, not like this cheapo thing that it's probably only meant for one or two additional monitors.
Might not even work with two. That would be my worry.
Yeah, because he plugged, he was able to have 6 monitors or so with the ones he had, which is why I suggested to him to use a powered USB hub, one that plugs into a wall outlet for additional power, and see if that works. Because if it does, that'll put less strain on a power supply, meaning the power supply won't fizzle out on you. which I think that may have been what happened to one of his systems.
Mm.
Um, because one day it quit powering on, and then I looked at it and nope, the power supply was shot. I'm like, And thinking back now, I'm thinking that put too much of a strain on it, which is why I've been thinking about upgrades on both towers. And there are 4 gigabyte video cards out there that can operate on a 300 watt power supply, but even that would be pushing it. So at some point I'll have to get newer equipment and relegate the older equipment to something else. But I haven't arrived at that bridge to cross it yet, so that'll be a little while.
Yeah.
But I guess better end this show before we both fall asleep, though.
It has been running for a little bit.
Yes, it has. Any future plans, ideas? Because as of 7 a.m. Saturday morning, most Saturdays, definitely all Sundays, I'll have a lot of time free.
I'm not sure. We'll definitely have to put some time into like bouncing ideas off back and forth. I'm running thin right now because my brain's been focused at work all day, so it's kind of fried right now.
Oh my goodness.
So usually when I come home, I like to just fizzle out and let my brain go dead for a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to Curtis because he did the one thing that kind of surprised me. Pleasant surprise. He is going to be studying computer science. So the message regarding mathematics and software development, you don't have to be totally super good at high-level math. That's what the machine's there for. You just have to know what the rules are and how it's supposed to work and how to write really, really decent code in order to because if you can do that, the computer will do the rest of the work for you. But I hope you do well in that.
Happy belated birthday. Don't forget that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Happy belated birthday to you, man. And hopefully those studies of yours pay off. If you do the whole developer or DevOps or whatever, that actually can. How much free time does your job leave you?
Off and on. It depends on the day. I mean, we recently made a change to what we're doing for deployments. So now instead of waiting 15 minutes per node of a particular server, I'm only going to be waiting 5 minutes, so I don't get to goof off for that extra 15 minutes. But usually, lately I've been kind of running out of things to do, so I'll sit there and then play around with Project Euler a little bit and code some more and keep my brain focused and keep working. And then I get some code to work on.
Like weekend-wise, like how much time outside of work do you actually get to have to yourself?
Oh, weekends?
Yeah.
I have not had to work on a weekend with the exception of one when we had a pretty nasty production problem happen after a storage upgrade for our servers. But other than that, I don't ever work on weekends.
Which would leave, those type of fields can often leave you weekends to basically enjoy nature and everything else. I've noticed, people who work in tech actually enjoy nature quite a bit, and they on their vacations you see pictures of them, whether fishing, whether it's just being outside in general. So I have a good feeling about this one. So, um, keep at it, and hopefully, something awesome comes out of it. Until next time, entertain yourself, educate yourself, empower yourself, and I'm looking forward to the future. Peace.
See you guys.